Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about the books that I have bought in October. This one's quite a fun little book haul because all of these books are books that I bought following the completion of my TBR. So yes, we are adding to the TBR. But it's exciting because it means that my TBR is full of like nice fresh new books that I'm just cycling through, things that are of immediate interest to me and therefore I'm going to read pretty quickly. Or if I'm not going to read them pretty quickly, I have a plan in mind for them, which will be explained obviously as we get through the video. So without much further ado, let's just get straight into these books. So the first book that kicked off my October book haul was actually something that I was sent by the publisher, as you'll see because it has a lovely little press release. But this book is Wolves of Winter by Dan Jones, the second book in the Essex Dogs trilogy. I will link below my review video for the first book in the series, Essex Dogs, but this is basically following this troop of men who are fighting for Edward III in France, continuing on with their story following the Battle of Crécy. The Essex Dogs are basically just working for hire, they are mercenary soldiers, but it's looking as if their chances of just being able to collect their money and go home is getting more and more unlikely. The next book that I picked up was actually in a charity shop following my friend's wedding. I was just kind of wandering around the town waiting for my train to arrive and I came across this book, which I've always been meaning to read. In fact, I think I mentioned it in one of my very first videos, which was my Very Tudor TBR, talking about Tudor history books that I'd really been wanting to get to. You know, it took 3 years, but here we are. And it is 1536, the year that changed Henry VIII by Suzannah Lipscomb. And this is just a short ditty thing focused, as the title suggests, on this one year that was very turbulent in Henry VIII's life. This particular year saw the death of Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn's final miscarriage of their son, before she would eventually be tried and imprisoned and later executed on falsified charges of adultery. We've got the marriage to Jane Seymour, the peasant reaction to the dissolution of the monasteries, culminating in the Pilgrimage of Grace. We've got the death of Henry Fitzroy, and I completely skirted over the jousting accident of 1536 back in January, which some historians claim was one of the driving factors in Henry VIII's change of personality. So many things happened to Henry VIII in this year. It's seen as his Annus Horribilis. And yeah, it's just one of those books I've always been meaning to read, but because I kind of know what the argument is, I've been like, I can pick that up whenever. But I am currently about 60 pages into this. I'm really enjoying it so far. I might put it on the back burner and enjoy it during non-fiction November, but yeah, one that I do think I'll just speed through. And then next up is a very exciting purchase because this was my most anticipated release of the year, I think, as I think it was for a lot of people. It is Emily Wilson's translation of the Iliad by Homer. This chunky thing, there was part of my brain that was like, maybe I should wait until the paperback comes out next August, but you know, when I actually saw it, I was like, no, must be mine now. And I have been quite slovenly with this. I'm currently only about 29 pages into this because I know that I'm about to read the catalogue of ships and I think part of my brain is a bit like, ugh. But I absolutely loved Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. So once I do get through that catalogue of ships, I'm sure I'm going to really enjoy this translation. And I'd be very curious to know if anybody else has read this and what they thought. Then next up we have Unruly, A History of England's Kings and Queens by David Mitchell. This is one that I have already read. David Mitchell, the comedian. And I will confess that I did listen to this on audiobook rather than physically reading it because, you know, David Mitchell was narrating it. Of course I had to listen to it. I just feel like I needed to listen to the Mitchellian rants rather than reading them. But this is comedian David Mitchell taking on the kings and queens of England from Athelstan through to Elizabeth I, and just basically his take on them. I think this is a very fun comedic beginner history, the tone of which, you know, if you watch any compilation of Would I Lie to You clips, you'll get the sense of David Mitchell in his sense of humour. And whenever we've watched Would I Lie to You, my mum's always making comments about how similar my opinions are to David Mitchell's and just various similarities, so I felt like, you know, I have to see what his take is on these kings and queens because that is a bit of a history pet love of mine. Next up, I will say of all of the book purchases that I have made this month, that these next two were probably the most frivolous, and even saying that, not so frivolous because I got them from charity shops and they were very inexpensive, but probably two that weren't on my immediate plans to read, but when I saw them I just had to get them. Two historical fiction books, and the first one is The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This is actually a repurchase for me. I remember I picked this up a couple of years ago when I first moved to Oxford. I read about 30 pages of it and then put it down. I think I actually donated my copy, just thinking it's not quite the right time for me, but I saw it and I just thought, yeah, I want to read this now. Emma Donoghue's historical fiction focusing on the Spanish influenza, set at a maternity hospital in Dublin, and I think it's taking place over the course of just a few days, and the trials and tribulations of this maternity ward as they're dealing with both expectant mothers as well as this influenza. I think maybe my issue lay in the fact that I was just maybe not quite ready to read a book about a pandemic, but now maybe I've got the brain space for it. And then another historical fiction is Devotion by Hannah Kent. I know pretty much nothing about this. Christmas, aside from the fact that it is Hannah Kent and it had a beautiful cover. I know that we're focusing particularly on a female friendship, which I think maybe becomes something more, but I'm not quite sure. It's at very least a very intense friendship if it's not romantic, this very isolated community, and I think different forces are going to tear these two apart. But that is all I know, and I'm very excited for it. And then the last half of this book haul is very seasonal reads that I had to pick up. I was very much in the mood for some Halloween reading, and so decided to pick up some ghostly short stories. First off, we have this collection of Gothic tales by Edgar Allan Poe, which features The Telltale Heart, which I had already read, The Mask of the Red Death, and then finally the one that I can't pronounce, Metzengestine. That was the only one that I didn't already have a fair idea of what it was about. I actually read this on a bus to rehearsal in Whitney and quite enjoyed this one. And then I have two other short story collections which are all historical fiction focused. This one, once again, is another repurchase for me. It's The Haunting Season, Ghostly Tales for Long Nights, with stories by Bridget Collins, Imogen Hermes-Gower, Kieran Millward-Hargrave, Andrew Michael Hurley, Jess Kidd, Elizabeth McNeil, Natasha Pulley and Laura Purcell. I think I picked this up either last year or the year before. I read the first short story and wasn't quite feeling it, but I'm honestly going to put a lot of blame on that to the fact that I was not very well last year, and so I just don't think I had the concentration level for this book. Once again, did not have my copy because I passed it on to a friend when I was doing a book on haul, but yeah, I saw it this year and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it another go, and I'm really glad I did. I'm currently about 2 stories in and just really in the mood for these. I'm really enjoying it so far. You'll also see how another book that I purchased in this book haul made me want to pick up this one again, but as I say, you'll have to wait until the end of the book haul. And then the second of these ghost stories was 8 Ghosts, the English Heritage Book of New Ghost Stories, with stories by Mark Haddon, Jeanette Winterson, Andrew Michael Hurley, so a repeat author here, Sarah Perry, Stuart Evers, Kate Clancy, Camilla Shamsi and Max Porter. So between these two, you're getting a good dose of British and Irish historical fiction writing. With this one, the authors were tasked to write a story based around a different English heritage site and just creating a ghost story around that, which just sounds really cool. And then finally, moving away from Halloween and straight on to Christmas, I have 2 Christmassy books that I just couldn't resist picking up. The first one being An Italian Christmas, Festive Tales for La Dolce Vita. Once again, it's some little short stories based around what it is like to celebrate Christmas in Italy. Last year, I picked up both a German Christmas and a Ukrainian Christmas. A German Christmas I do believe was in the same series, a Ukrainian Christmas was separate, but I really enjoyed getting to learn more about different customs and traditions in different countries to my own. And so yeah, when I saw this, I couldn't resist it. And then finally, the last book on this book haul is The Winter Spirits, Ghostly Tales for Frosty Nights, from the creators of The Haunting Season. So following on from The Haunting Season, which is obviously more inspired by Halloween, here we have ghost stories that are inspired by Christmas. I believe there were 8 stories in The Haunting Season, whereas there are 12 here, so one for every night of Christmas, should you choose to read it that way. Once again, we have Bridget Collins, Imogen Hermes-Gower, Kieran Millward-Hargrave, Andrew Michael Hurley, Jess Kidd, Elizabeth McNeil, Natasha Pulley and Laura Purcell, but then we also have Laura Shepherd-Robinson, Susan Stokes-Chapman, Stuart Turton and Katrina Ward. And yeah, I just think this is absolutely stunning, a beautiful addition to my Christmas books. I also picked up the Waterstones edition. Now, you'll know that I'm not a massive fan of sprayed edges, but in the case of this one, I thought it wouldn't be too distracting to my reading. And look at that! How gorgeous is that? And it kind of matches what I'm wearing. How lovely. I did not plan that. So there we go. Those are all of the books that I've picked up in October. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken to you about today. Let me know what you thought of them. Alternatively, let me know anything that you picked up recently. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.